Florida State fans, rejoice. This is your weekly stop for college football talk on the Knolls, Wednesdays at 7 o'clock Eastern time, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, where we bring in the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry. Should have the same trio as our edition number one, which, of course, if you missed, was a good time with James Coleman from Fifth Quarter College Football. Jason Parker from Chop Chat. Those two gentlemen on the line with me right now. And we also had Logan Robinson that we expect coming on from Knoll Game Day momentarily. Good time talking Florida State football in our inaugural edition last week. So check it out. Again, lock it in right here to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Big Game James, how you doing tonight?
Man, I'm just one of them happy to be here, guys, man.
Oh, I love it.
I tried to
get
get
the
some better
stogie fired up. Is that what I saw?
Doobie, you said?
No. I said stogie. It's what I said.
I haven't got my medicinal. I might need that for this year. But now I got my Stokes. Every day after I get done training athletes and before I do radio, I've got to smoke a cigar to decompress. I got a steak, too. As soon as we get done with this, I'm going to eat me a nice, fat steak.
Nice fat steak. I got to do 2 more hours of this after this. All right, Jason, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing just fine. And of course, I complain, but I do this to myself because I love college football so much. And because we're building a mini empire here, or we like to think so, here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So Jason had some really top-notch interviews when it comes to Florida State football. It doesn't get much better than Willie Taggart and James Blackman this week. So, Jason, we'd like you to expound on that. Obviously, point us in the right direction in regards to where we can catch the full rundown of the interviews, and then we'll have James kind of respond to what he thinks is maybe said between the lines. So, Jason, Willie Taggart and James Blackman, and it must have been quite a scene.
I mean, it was the moment that dreams are made of between the three of us. No, Coach Taggart and James Blackman, they were both down here in South Florida. They were in the annual booster event in Miami Gardens. We talked to them for about 15 minutes. A couple of members of the media joined myself and the two gentlemen. The big thing that I got, and we talked about this before we went on, the big thing was the mood. Both men came in there with it was a mood of, we know what happened last year, but the future is bright. And that's the first thing I asked Coach Taggart. I said, what is your mindset entering 2019? And his first comment was, I'm happier than I was last year. And we talked about that. When we interviewed him at the same time last year, he was smiling. It was the dream job. That's what he talked about. And the big thing is, he says that he had a better understanding now after what took place last year of where he's at, and a better understanding of where the players are entering year 2. We talked about that. We talked about the mindset of the football team as a whole. He said that one of the things that he appreciates is how the team is holding each other accountable, how they're doing things the right way, how he sees that as a huge step in the right direction. He still would not name a starting quarterback. I pushed him with several questions, but was overly confident about James Blackman as a starter. He talked about how that he's been willing to learn, how he wants to impress the coaches, how he wants them to see that he knows how a Florida State quarterback should play, and how he's been both a leader on the field and off the field. He talked a little bit about the hiring of the 3 new assistant coaches on offense. Talked about how it was important for them to get back to finding somebody as an offensive coordinator, talking about Kendall Briles, who knows and understands what he wants, the direction that he wants. High praise for Ron Dugans, the new wide receiver coach, talking about how the current players will be able to look at him and see, oh, this is a guy who did what we're doing. He put in the work in the Garnet and Gold, and how he'll build off that. So it was an insightful time. You can read all of our stuff on shopchat.com. We've got plenty of stuff going through into next week. Yeah, and I mean, both gentlemen, very good interviews. We love talking to them.
James, your response?
I mean, it's Taggart's doing his rounds that all the coaches that have come from Florida State previous have done. And I mean, James Blackman, as we've done this for a year, I was really high on him. I believe in the videos we were doing this time last year, just from a leadership, how he carries himself and how he controls not controls, but he has the locker room. So he has all the tools to be able to run the Kendall Browns offense effectively. I always hate to use this quote because it came from a rival coach, but he was in describing Felipe Franks. Mullen said, you don't have to be a great runner. You have to be a willing runner. So to be able to drop back, make your reads, and then if nothing's there, be able to use your legs, just the threat of that keeps the defense honest. And I believe that's what Blackman's going to be able to do. He's also very cerebral, and I think more than what people give him credit for. When you look at what he was able to do as an 18-year-old, he was able to have a significant amount of control over the offense. And when you look at a couple mistakes don't get made against Clemson, that game's closer. If we make a stop against Miami, we don't have to play that last game. There's some things that he could have done his freshman year. But then when he came in on spot duty in his redshirt year last year, when you look at how his control was of the North Carolina State game, that game wasn't lost by the offense. That game was more so lost by the defense. And I think Blackman brings that another year of maturity, another year of getting strong, and the ability to be able to throw that deep ball, which I think is critical in the Taggart or now the Browns offense, to be able to keep that defense honest. We saw it when DeAndre Francois wasn't terrified and he climbed the pocket, and then all of a sudden you had Scary Terry. That was deep. I think you'll see a lot more of that between Terry, Treshaun Harrison, Jordan Young, Warren Thompson, some of these younger guys getting in the fold. I also believe, and I agree with everything that Taggart said, like I think it's easy for us as a fan, it's easy to say like, all right, and that's what Taggart was. I got the job at FSU. Whew, it should be easy. I got my dream job. There is a lot that goes into it, i.e. the fans, but the culture. It's a culture that's a lot different than other universities. Understanding the Seminole boosters relationship, understanding the admin relationship, understanding the dynamics of the city of Tallahassee. I think we don't give Taggart enough grace for the fact that as soon as he hit the ground, as soon as he signed that contract, he took over a 65 ranked recruiting class that had a lot of decommits. So he's literally, this is the first chance that he might have even got a chance to maybe even kiss his wife during this off season and breathe. So on top of having a son that had to find a new school, find a new house. So there are little nuances that, you would think that most people should be able to handle. But I think when you add everything up, it was a perfect storm on top of not having injuries and not having a great season. But it's a lot of, he should be happy. It should be a lot of optimism, more optimism than what people probably should. People should be more optimistic than what they have been in the past. But I can understand because this is the worst season we've had in 40 years. But Taggart doesn't have a reason to hold his head. The recruiting class last year was good enough. If we get Nick Cross, I believe it's a top 15 class. But you can't. The dad had other options. Other plans. But you strengthened all the places that we were weak last year. Outside of maybe the offensive line, but you got a better coach. So we'll see. Like I have utmost optimism for it, and I can understand why Tag would be that way.
The wife wants and deserves a kiss before the husband heads off to work. So you need to make sure that that's taken care of. Absolutely. But considering what Willie's bringing home every 2 weeks, she should be satisfied with that as well.
No, you would think. You would think.
All right.
Aisha Curry not be happy about that, though. We saw a guy who makes $40 million a year in basketball with a wife that complains. So, but a happy wife, happy life. Isn't that what they say?
That's what they say. And some of those cliches are actually true. That would be one of them. So here's my take on it. First of all, in terms of the confidence, Jason, you said both Willie and James extremely confident. I think that's either telling or it really doesn't matter. Number one, I don't know how well these guys can act. Confidence, James could speak to it much better than I could as an athlete. And then communicating to the media, communicating to others how confident you are. We all know people that have true confidence, other people that just like to put on an act. Well, these two guys are very accomplished, especially Willie Taggart. He's enjoyed success in his career, so he has to have some feeling of self-confidence that he knows how to coach. He knows how to run a program. Sure, he had a bump in the road, and it was the worst bump in the road of his career, considering the talent and the circumstances and the expectations in place. So maybe that shook his confidence a little bit. But this is a guy that's gone from stop to stop to stop and taken woeful football programs and turned them into winners. So he's got to have a level of confidence, or he wouldn't have ever gotten the job. And both of these guys are competitors. You don't compete at this level without being a competitor. Therefore, you have confidence. They go hand in hand, or it all could be, or a semblance of it could be an act. And it really doesn't matter until they hit the field, and we'll see what they've got. In terms of Willie Taggart's comfort level, I think that's pretty obvious. That's a pretty natural development from year 1 to year 2. First time you hit the field, new team, new players. You don't know these guys. You don't know what you've got, both on the field and in terms of off the field, in terms of their personalities, their character, how they're going to approach the game, if you're going to have to push them, if you're going to have to prod them, what you're going to have to do. And he's just more comfortable at the university. Everything is just a higher comfort level. So that's just a good thing going into year 2. I can't think of, I was scanning teams, both of you, as Jason was running down the comfort level and the confidence. I was trying to find a team, and I've got no investment in this situation, that I am more fascinated to see play and see a result, both in week 1 and then as the season unfolds, than Florida State. Outside of Alabama and Clemson, which we pretty much have a almost complete known of who they are. Then you've got, to a little lesser degree, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma. We know what those teams are going to do. We would be shocked if they went out there and lost 4 or 5 games. I can't think of a team in the nation that I just don't know what I'm going to get, and I am fascinated to see if they're going to go 5-7 or 6-6 again, or if they're going to contend and maybe outside of Clemson be the best team in the ACC. I could see either one. I'm probably going to split my and hedge my bets and go about 8-4 for this team, but I don't know what I'm going to get out of them. I think they're one of the most fascinating teams in America.
Well, and I expected him, and I said something after our interview was over where I said something to Coach Taggart about how I expected him to come in, a little bit more serious and whatnot. And you hit the nail on the head right there. This is not the first time. He did this at Western Kentucky. He did this at USF. Oregon's the one spot, obviously, because he was only there 1 year, where he didn't have a losing season first and then build it up. I think he knows that the future is a lot brighter in Tallahassee than what the former coach before left. And we're not going to get into that. Well, maybe we will later. We got an hour to go. But I think that he realizes, okay, there's a lot of positives ahead for this team. If I go 8-4 this season, then I go 10-2 the year after that. Okay, I've built something up here. The only issue where I'm in trouble is if all of a sudden this team is 5-7 or 6-6 this year, and then okay, we've got a problem.
Again, to use a rival in to like kind of gauge where FSU fans should be at. You can see a lot of similarities in UF and in this FSU team. Outside of this is a second-year coach. You're coming into a situation where there's a much more favorable schedule. Last year we played one of the best North Carolina State's team that they had, one of the best Boston College teams they've had. Syracuse had their best team that they've had. So there's a lot of teams that were peaky, and that FSU should beat. But if you're being honest, you can see where they could lose those games. This year's schedule is a little bit easier. Should be a little bit past. That Virginia team should be a lot better. But you should be able to look at that schedule and see 8 wins. But you can very easily see if things go the right way, they can easily win 10 games. I.e., if you can make last 2 years, if you make one play against Miami, you're able to have a 10 unbelievable even be able to say this. You can be 9-0 against Miami if one player makes one play the last 2 years. And the only game I look at that schedule and just say I firmly do not believe we have the Jimmies and Joes to beat, and that's Clemson. I also think Florida has it. They should have a good amount of momentum coming into this season. But confidence plays a huge factor into a lot of these different things. And if they get that ball rolling against Boise, who knows what that Clemson game could be? Because they can go to that Clemson game undefeated with a lot and cooking on a lot of different cylinders and being able to stress and stretch teams. So, but the other thing too is that where the other stops he's went to, Western Kentucky, South Florida, Oregon, these were schools that he was going to. Like Western Kentucky was defeated, I believe, either the year before he took it or 2 years before he took it. So you've got a defeated Western Kentucky. You've got South Florida. This is what he didn't take over the South Florida that went to number 2 in the nation. He took over the South Florida that Skip Holtz kind of ran into the ground. So they had no choice but to buy in. Oregon had missed the bowl game. They had one of their worst seasons. Had no choice but to buy in. So now you've got a Florida State who hasn't missed the bowl, and a coach in the offseason that season before was kind of in detriment. But you had guys who were used to competing for ACC championships and kind of bullheaded. And the nature of an elite athlete is you've had success doing it one way, so you're going to force it your way. Guys had to realize I'm not winning unless I do what that coach, what the team tells me to do. So now you kind of got experience in losing and that bad taste, as well as you've got a couple guys that needed to be processed out or needed to graduate. So now you have to hope that you've got another class of guys with you, but realistically, he's one more class away from having a majority of his guys there. So this year should be better. It's really that 2020 season is really where you should see Tag hopefully take it to that next level. Now, if he goes 6-6, he's probably not going to get a chance to see those 2020 guys.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with Florida State Live Talk each and every Wednesday night with these gentlemen right here. Jason Parker from Chop Chat and James Coleman, Big Game James, fifth quarter college football. Want to remind you that you can help us build the channel. So if you want like live streams like this, so as soon as I rolled out, gentlemen, the Florida State live stream and then later the Ohio State live stream, then I had requests, of course, for LSU and Clemson and Michigan and on down the line. Well, I can't be doing live streams every night all night without your help. So please subscribe, like, comment, and do all those good things. But also grab the Amazon link in the description section below and do your Amazon shopping to help us build the channel. Also, join me on Patreon for the Voice of College Football community. Sign up on Patreon. You get 2 exclusive live streams every week. But look out, I'm going to respond to your viewer comments. So we had 6,000 at this point last year. We have 36,000 comments year to date. And I tear through them. So if you leave a logical, reasonable argument on college football, hey, I applaud. But look out, because I tear most of them up. So if you've got enough guts, we'll say, to join me on Patreon, I respond to your viewer comments. Also have 1 live stream a week on Patreon where I bring you on to talk college football with me. All right, 7 o'clock every Wednesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time, right here for Florida State Football Talk. So tell your friends and your family and your social media acquaintances. Are either one of you or both of you can chime in on Rob Krause's question here on the live chat. He is asking about Jordan Travis's status.
Yeah, they still haven't said it. They still haven't said it. It still hasn't been cleared. Bringing Hornibrook in, Jordan Travis is probably a luxury, but more than likely he won't be in effect. He won't have an effect to the 2020 season anyway. So it's more than likely going to be Blackman, Hornibrook, and then if we're down at quarterback 3, we got bigger issues.
All right. Here's an off-season question that I threw at James a couple weeks ago, so he may not want to reiterate his answers. But we've got a lineup, and for those of you who watch me on a regular basis, I've talked to, I don't know, teams across the country, bloggers across the country throwing out these questions because it's a fun May, June question, off-season. Best wins in program history. So you don't have to go back to 1922. Whatever your time reference as a fan, somebody who watches the team.
I was told there'd be no math.
Best wins, worst losses. We'll get to that another time. We're going to focus on wins. We get to player questions, changes you'd like to make to the program. So, Jason, we're going to start with you. We've heard from James before, but James obviously has a tremendous perspective as fan turned into player, turned into media analyst. But, Jason, we'll start with you on, again, these don't have to be the greatest wins, like we won the national championship. Whatever your criteria as most exhilarating, best wins that you've seen Florida State football.
I mean, obviously, any of the 3 national titles are going to be up there on the list because that's what you're playing for. James knows that better than anyone. You're playing for a title, whether it's ACC title or national title. So any one of those. As far as recently, to me, I'd probably say, and we talked a little bit about this last week, to me, it was the 2013 Florida State-Miami game. In Doak Campbell, both teams coming in ranked in the top 7 nationally. I know everyone likes to talk about the Clemson game that season, and that was a huge game because Florida State went out there and smoked Clemson. Miami, and we'll do a little Miami bashing here, obviously, over the course of the year. Miami came in thinking that they were a relevant team again. They thought that they were a big team again. Florida State, and the atmosphere was great, 84,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs. It was an amazing atmosphere, night game inside Doak Campbell. By the time the end of the third quarter happened, the green and orange was just peeled out of there, and it was a scary moment because that was the point where you realized, even after the Clemson game was great in 2013. That season was amazing. But even after that Clemson game, you thought, okay, we still have Miami. At the time, we still have Florida at the end of the year. You still have all these other games. That Miami game was the game where you realized, and by that point, Florida had struggled. You realized that FSU team was so good that even playing, statistically, even playing not a great ball game, still beat the number 7 team in the country by almost 4 touchdowns. To me, that was season over.
Anytime you can beat a rival down, that's got to be a fun moment. Trying to go back through, to me, FSU made me relive the 2005 Miami game, which was amazing. I always joke, people ask on Twitter all the time, hey, what's your favorite game? I was like, anyone that I scored a touchdown. But that's just a perspective that not everybody can really have. But that 99, all right, so beating Kansas, actually Iowa State was another game, going up against Seneca Wallace. That was my first game I ever went to as a player. I ain't played, but that was an exciting game. But you got to say 99 Virginia. If I had to pick national championship games, I would have to go with the Virginia Tech game because one, Michael Vick was a creative player, video game type guy, and that defense had so many NFL players that he was able to make look silly as a redshirt freshman. So I think that probably would go down. That's probably, especially now, the older we get, these recruits don't remember the old games, but they definitely can remember that one. And having guys like Peter Ward, Michael Vick, Ron Dugans, a lot of these guys on the field at the same time, that just was that game right there was amazing.
James, you scored 7 touchdowns in your career rushing, 1 against Miami, I see. Do you have a favorite time reaching the end zone?
West Virginia Gator Bowl, because I don't know how I scored that touchdown. That shouldn't have happened. I ran into a brick wall. They definitely stood me up. I took 2 steps back, and then I just jumped and hoped for the best. And then all of a sudden, I landed in the end zone. I had no idea how that happened. So that was my favorite out of all of them. I got a chance to show my little bit of athleticism.
So tell us about the bowl games and the bowl experience, because I argue with people on here all the time, but obviously I don't have the player's perspective about the legitimacy of the bowl games. How did you guys approach it?
I wrote an article 2 years ago when I was writing for Gridiron Now. The bowl game is not for you. it's cool and all, like for the fans, like it's a vacation experience. And the bowl game is like, it's like you work all year with your regular job, and that's your end of the year bonus. So just imagine, like, whether you get a big bonus, like which would be the national championship, or you get a little small bonus. But imagine, like, you know that there's a bonus if you perform well, and you don't get it. So that's what the bowls are. You get to typically go to a city that you've never been to. They pay you. Well, they give you a stipend for all the meals that they don't cover, and they
We got a
typically cover
story
all your
here. Keep
meals.
going, James.
And you get, again, it's just you get to hang out. Most away games, it's literally, it's all business. So it's like you go, you show up, you don't get a chance to see the city. But the bowl game, it's more relative to like an NFL schedule. So like you're done practicing at 3 o'clock, and you have the rest of the afternoon to be able to go see the city, hang out, see your family, do different things like that, and then you play in the game. So that's what how I've always looked at it. If you don't think it means anything, my senior year, we won the first ACC championship game. So like, not FSU won many ACCs. 2005 was the first championship game, and because of the season we had, we were either going to go to Miami or we were going to go to Boise, Idaho. That's what we were projecting. And we literally came into the ACC championship game saying we're playing for per diem. We all of us seniors were like, if we got to go to Boise, we're signing with agents. We'll pick up our gift package, but we ain't playing in this game. So like, some people think like that's new talk. People talking about skipping bowl games. Now we were gonna skip that Boise, Idaho blue turf game in the snow possibly, but you play for the opportunity to go places. But for Florida State, you're used to playing New Year's Day bowls and things like that. But like a small school, like you may not have never, that might be the first bowl game in years or in history. So that means something to that program. And for me, a fan of college football, give me more bowl games. I think we've put so much emphasis on the national championship, and it should be. That's an honor that only two teams play for, or I guess 4 teams play for in the playoff scenario. But I like being able to see matchups that you would not traditionally be able to see, and it just makes for more fun. From a fan perspective, you may not care, but for the player's perspective, that's what that bowl game is more about.
I love the bowl games. I love the bowl games. And I understand the criticism against 5- and 6-win teams playing in bowl games because we think of postseason play as being good teams play in the postseason. But what I don't understand is when people say the bowl games don't count, they're exhibition games. Well, first of all, they do count. There is a rankings taken, a poll taken after the bowl games, and we don't say that so-and-so team went 10-2. We say they went 11-2 or they went 10-3. It counts on their record. Number two, aside from playing your rival, and even in the rivalry games, any game that Florida State will play this year, there will be tons of other college football games, big college football games on other networks being played. So the audience of College Football Nation is divided in watching all these other games. There is no other time through the year when there's a few bowl games that overlap, but most of them are exclusive to that time slot. And if you want to watch college football, you got to watch that bowl game. And so there are bigger audiences for the bowl game. I would tell my team this: more people are going to be watching you play this bowl game than any game this year because you have an exclusive national audience. And then the other thing that doesn't make any sense to me, that unless you play for a conference championship or you're in the running for a conference championship and a division title at the end of the year, there's all sorts of teams across the country playing meaningless games, in quotes, in November because they've been knocked out of the conference race. Well, they're not skipping those games or saying, well, these are meaningless. Michigan State, Illinois games meaningless in November because we're 6-4 and we're not going to win the Big Ten, but we're going to get to a bowl game, and then that's meaningless. I don't get it, Jason.
And I've said this, and I've been an outspoken critic of the playoff system because to me, I'll say this: the playoff system, and if it ever expands to 8 teams, 16 teams, whatever, to me, it is ruining what college football is about. Growing up, and you talk about, we'll use just bowl games, for example. You had the New Year's Day, you had the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, even some of the lesser games here in the state of Florida, being a Florida native. You have the Citrus Bowl, the Outback Bowl, you have the Peach Bowl. You have all these different games. That is what college football is about. And we can talk to James about that. The 2004 season, winning the Gator Bowl over West Virginia, is one of I would guarantee is one of his crowning moments as a Florida State Seminole. Bowl games matter. Bowl games are what makes college football. Bowl games are what college football is about. And anything that takes away from that, to me, is killing the sport. It's what made college football special.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it too is how programs are built. FSU was built not only playing people on the road, but going to these bowl games where you get, like for example, let's look at it like this: let's say West Virginia, you're coming down to Jacksonville, Florida, to play in a Gator Bowl. There's a lot of residents now, or a lot of kids who are in this hotbed who now get a chance to watch your practice, understand the coaches, meet them, and you get an understanding of what it's like to go play there. A lot of these places growing up, especially in the inner city, you would never know that they played football in Wyoming, or you would never know they played football in Boise, Idaho, or you've never seen Nebraska. But this is your time to see them and kind of put yourself on a map against different, more quality competition. So there's so many things that happen for that program, for the players, and for the experience, and also the cities that host these games. I never like when I played in Jacksonville in the Gator Bowl, where I live now, and I do radio. I vowed to never live in this city. Hated it. It was the most boring game I had ever been to. Now I can't see myself never living anywhere else. So you get a lot of guys who say, "Hey, that wasn't a bad place. I wouldn't mind living here." And I think there's so many good things, and I agree with Jason. I think the coverage of the playoff system has diminished the value, and everybody's not Alabama, everybody's not Clemson, and Alabama won't be on top forever. Clemson won't be on top forever. It'll be somebody else. So you have to, like, these bowl games are how you remain relevant on the scene. And like you said, Mark, there's no other way that you can have everybody's attention on a Thursday at 8 p.m. like a bowl game.
The Florida State game is huge, but it's on rivalry weekend. And especially when those teams aren't at their peak, that game's up against Ohio State and Michigan, and, which owns that day, and other games. Not as many people are watching that game. I know it's huge, but watching that game have as many eyeballs as the bowl game. Even if you're playing in the Birmingham Bowl, that's the only college football going on at that point. And so I know that that's not the end all be all, how many people are watching the game, but people, and I work for a TV network. I know what the ratings are. I get them every day. There's a difference between, I think people relate the number of people in the stands. So unless it's a huge bowl game, we know that you'll have a Northern Illinois, Wyoming matchup in San Diego at the Poinsettia Bowl, and there's nobody there. There's 18,000 people in a 75,000 seat stadium, and people automatically equate importance to packed house versus empty seats, whereas nobody can get to the game. That doesn't show you the interest in the game because it's all on television.
Right. So the other thing too is, so for guys like me I have an athletic family, but me and my sister were the first people to go to college. My sister was an all ACC track athlete at FSU. I remember how I got into football was where I grew up in Jersey is Thanksgiving. The game that we would watch, that would be how we saw FSU in Florida, when it's on there. So I recall sitting around watching my uncles drink, smoke cigars, get full, eat food, and then we're watching this football game. We're bonding. Bowl games. During Christmas time, you have all your family over. The women go cook or whatever they do in your house, my house. The women go cook. The men go gather around the TV. They're watching these games. There's so many other things that these bowl games allow for you to do. And I think, and I got into this argument about NFL ratings and all these other things. People consume sports so much different. Like, there's so many options. Like, yes, there's nothing like experiencing a game in a stadium. I encourage everybody to do that. It's also about, yeah, I'm a guy who doesn't have to buy tickets to the game, to the school that he goes to for the most part. To buy four $50 tickets, I'm already 200 in the hole. To buy snacks, now I'm another probably $200 in the hole. I got to pay $30 for parking. When I could go watch, and it's hot in Florida. When I could just go watch that same game, go to the local grocery store, buy some chips and some beer, and I can have just as good of experience right in front of my TV. I think that's when bowl games aren't sold out, it's less to do with the product that's on the field and more to do with the marketing and how that bowl game promotes it and how they bring to people. These bowl game tickets are like $65 to $85. I'm not spending that either if I don't have the resources. They can make the game packed. They can easily drop the ticket price down to $25 to $30, and they can get a whole bunch of people in there. But there's benefits and there's not benefits. But the biggest thing is you can't knock having 1 million to 2 million people, which is probably the average of most of these games. 1 million to 2 million people watch your program and watch your college.
Anything on this, Jason? I'm going to serve up another question if not.
No, just real quick. I think that when you say that over 40 bowl games are too many bowl games, yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot of people who agree with that. That being said, take a handful away, take 5 or 6 away. Give me 35 bowl games over an expanded playoff any day of the week. And that's the hill I'll die on. That's what college football is. College football is bowl games in Mobile, Miami, Montgomery, everywhere over an expanded playoff. Give me that over a 16-team playoff in college football any day of the week.
Jason Parker's on the line from Chop Chat. You can join him right there. He just interviewed Willie Taggart and James Blackman this week with some other reporters, and the full synopsis of that interview's right there. James Coleman, Big Game James 36 with fifth quarter college football. This is Florida State Seminoles live right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Lock it in here each and every day. We've done position previews, and I'm going to grab one of these guys or maybe Logan Robinson to help me sort through positions, or maybe we'll do it right on the show starting next week. We'll pick a position or two each week to preview to set you up for 2019.
We've got plenty of time. We can do it. We got plenty of weeks to go.
We got a few weeks. We got a few weeks to go. And the one thing I'll serve up to you two is because in this never-ending war of words and battle on the field between Miami, Florida, and Florida State's obviously in the unique position of playing both of them each year. And aside from the obvious that the Miami game's more important because Florida State is typically in the ACC race, and obviously it's a ACC conference game. Other than that, Jason, which game's more important? Florida State, Miami, Florida State, Florida.
It's okay. I'm going to answer it like this, and James can chime in with his opinion on this one too. To me, it depends on where you're from as an FSU fan, as an FSU student, as an FSU alumni. If you're from South Florida, where I live just outside Fort Lauderdale, you grow up with more fans. You grow up with more people who go to So there is more of a understanding of There's a dislike for There's an outright hate for Florida. When Miami plays Florida this year on August 24th, I'll say it, I will be rooting for Miami. I hope Miami dog stomps the Florida Gators this year. Now, that being said, there are friends of mine from the Tampa area, from the Orlando area, from the Jacksonville area, where obviously there's much more Gators than Canes up in those areas, who fans tend to hate both teams, but hate Florida a little bit less because they know more people who either went to Florida or friends or family who root for the Gators. So I think that's where a lot of it's from. So if you're asking my opinion, to me, it's more important to beat Florida than it is to beat Miami. But that being said, beat the hell out of both teams. That's my opinion. Beat the hell out of both of them. You go 2-10, but you're state champs. Yeah, sucks, but it's not the end of the world. At least you're state champs.
I think that's a great synopsis. I would say it's historically Florida. Right now, Miami means more. Like, you beat Miami, you lose to Miami, that's a conference loss, and you already got to deal with Clemson. So, like, you're already behind the eight ball. This is the first year that the games are flipped. Like, we play Clemson, I believe. We usually play Miami before Clemson, but if you lose to Miami, that Clemson, now you have to win every ACC game to be able to compete for that title. But man, nothing makes me smile more than Florida suffering. Just from a fan perspective and a joke. Now, the older I've gotten, the more former Florida players that I've gotten to know. You do business with them or you see them around, and it's different. Our trash talk is different, but Florida's a little more smug than Miami. Most Miami fans could never get into Miami if they wanted to. Most Florida fans probably couldn't get into Florida either, but it's just more of a Florida just from everything, from an academic perspective. If you can get into Florida State, more than likely you can get into Florida. If you can get in, now that don't mean you can get into Miami if you're a student. Like, a Miami student, a true Miami fan that went to the university, I got to tip my hat off to them. That means you're smarter than most Americans. But Florida fans they come with a different type of energy. It's more of a holier than thou type thing. And I have to respect Miami because Miami and FSU rose together in the 80s by a anybody, anywhere type mentality. So I always tell people, I was really close to going to Miami, so I can't hate Miami like that.
So, James, even if your opinion and your angle was unto itself, I'd certainly respect it, of course. But I hear that backed up from Florida State fans and Miami fans all over the place about the hatred being pointed toward the respectful hate going toward the other, meaning Miami or Florida State, the just sheer hate. And we say that in a sports context for most. For some of you, I'm not going to try to explain where your mind is, but the sheer hatreds toward the Gators for the reasons that both of you cite, and especially James right there. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So what you need to do if you love college football is lock it down right here. So anybody watching, whether it's live right now or we had about 1,500 have watched the recorded version from last week, and you're not subscribed, I don't understand. You don't have to agree with me. Dislike the videos if you disagree with me. But watch the video, subscribe, of course, like and comment, and do all those good things. Help us build the channel. Again, if you love discussion on college football and debate and analysis like nowhere else, just dive into the videos and grab that Amazon link to do your shopping at Amazon and help us build the channel. Join us on Patreon at the Voice of College Football Community. There are 2 exclusive live streams with you and me each and every week. You can catch the audio. So everything you hear, for the most part, on the channel here, you can just hear the audio at Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play. All right, the Super Chat's on as well. And again, I just let you know, if you find value in what you hear here each and every day, then help us on the Super Chat as well. All right, well, we've got a few minutes. Why not? Worst losses, Jason. Worst losses since you've been covering, a fan of the team at Florida State. And again, it doesn't have to be a championship was on the line, therefore it's a bad loss. Whatever hit you still aches today, excruciating, crushing loss, or 2 or 3.
As a growing up, would be losing to Florida in the '96 title game, getting smoked by them because of, as we talked about, because the outright hate for them. As a student, it would be losing to Penn State in the Orange Bowl because that was my final game as a student. Yeah, James, I'm looking right at you. Yeah, you laugh it up. Okay. Hurt me right here. No, just kidding. But yeah, that one hurt because it was the final game. As a fan, as an alumni since, I'd probably say 2012 NC State, losing by 1 point. Losing to that one hurt because that's an NC State team we should have beat easily, and we just came out and laid an egg in the second half, and that's why that one hurts. You can lose to good teams, but when you lose to a team that you should beat, that's the one that really, really gets you. So that one's probably the worst out of the group, but those would probably be my three in my journey as an FSU, growing up as an FSU fan, as a student, and as an alumni. Those would be my three worst losses.
What you got, James?
Trying to think. As a fan, I'd say, yeah, I agree with that NC State loss. We win that game. Florida game means more. I still don't understand why EJ decided to have his worst game ever. It's like we competed, like nobody wanted to win that game for some reason, but we beat NC State, we beat Florida, we played in the national championship. Period. My worst loss as a player was the Clemson game in 2003. Similar reasons. We came in ranked number 3, I believe, and it was my first time ever playing at Clemson, and Clemson's a unique fan experience. Again, one of those games, if you're a Clemson fan, you need to go watch a game in Death Valley, especially at 8 o'clock. Probably the loudest stadium I've ever played in. We just did not take care of business. If we handle business, we go into Florida, and we more than likely – no, we beat Florida that year. So, but we take care of business against Clemson. We play in the national championship game. Because they only lost – we had 2 losses to Miami. We lost to Miami in the rain. We lost to Miami in the bowl game. But we beat Clemson. We're a one-loss team, and there's probably no reason we wouldn't play in the national championship game. That Penn State game, I ain't going to lie to you. I was just tired. We were tired. The 3 overtimes is a lot. Like that, and you start at 8. I think the game ended at like 1 o'clock. So like, yeah, we were ready to go. But yeah, that's the those would be the ones that or NC State in 2002. Phillip Rivers was good. Did not know Phillip Rivers, T.A. McClendon, they had Mario Williams. They had Manny Lawson, I believe. They had some guys that ended up being drafted high, played a good amount of years in the NFL. So, but that's where you are when you're at that type of program. You play against some of the best, and you have losses that don't make sense at the time, but then you find out 3 or 4 years later that, oh yeah, those teams were pretty good.
Yeah, there was no shame in losing to that Penn State team in particular. They lost one game by 1 second, lost on a Mario Manningham touchdown reception in the back of the end zone at the Big House against Michigan with 1 second left on the clock. They still won the Big Ten championship 11-1. Otherwise, they're undefeated, and that's the classic USC-Texas national championship game that Penn State would have had some kind of argument that they belonged in that game as well had they not lost to Michigan. So they arrived
on that game too. If you go back and you watch it, I believe the quarterback was Marcus Robinson, right?
That's not his first name, but I can't come up with his first name. He played for the Michael Robinson, played for the San Francisco 49ers. Yep.
That man played a hell of a football game. He took a beating. Like our defense, Cam Wembley, a guy that most FSU fans wouldn't probably recognize his name, Marcelo Church, had a hell of a game. Willie Reed, another guy that most FSU fans probably wouldn't recognize. He had like 2 kickoffs. Actually, he got the Orange Bowl MVP in a loss. We had some guys play lights out, but Michael, like every play was being crushed, but he just got up and threw it. Funny story though from that game. At halftime, going into halftime, we were trying to kill the clock. Our defense had a goal line stand, and we ran my play 34 belly. I will admit that was a safety. Like I got crushed. It was the first time in my career that I got hit. I thought I was gonna score. I thought I was gonna score a 99-yard touchdown. I saw the hole. It was there, and I was gonna run all my 40. But then all of a sudden, the defensive tackle came on a stunt, and he caught me clean, and I was dropped. my son's mother, when we were dating, she was like, "What's the worst hit?" And so we were on a date that night, and I was like, "Yeah, this is the worst hit I've ever gotten." Blah blah blah. I was describing it to her at a T. So we come back home, and ESPN. I turned the TV on. Just so happened to be on ESPN. Just so happened to be an ESPN Classic game. Why was it when I turned the TV on? It was that play that was being shown, and so she didn't know me playing football, but her first ever glimpse of me playing football was seeing me get laid out on the ESPN Classic replay. So that was funny. I always think that
is like divine intervention. You talk about coincidence.
Yeah, so like it's probably better ways to make a first impression on a date. On a first date, but
you're down on the field though. You were on the field.
That's true.
That's always impressive. Always impressive to me.
I always tell people.
Always impressive. And that Penn State team was serious.
When they show me my stats, I always ask them, like, "What were yours?" Like, if you gotta show me your stats if we're going to.
That's right.
Stats. It's not fair.
That's right. James Coleman, Big Game James 36. Join him on Twitter. Also join him on SportsDen Live and also Fifth Quarter College Football. Jason Parker, Chop Chat, his interview this week with James Blackman and Willie Taggart. We're talking Florida State football each and every week right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, 7 o'clock Eastern time. And is typically the case, we have more people online right this second before we're leaving and signing off than we do the entire hour. So you got to make it a date. I send out the notification during the day. So if you're subscribed to my channel, the voice of college football right here, then you get the notification. You're all set up. You got the link. Boom. And you can join us. So for most of you who missed most of this conversation, you know what you need to do. You just hang around for a few minutes. Boom. The video processes and posts, and you can watch it from the start. Gentlemen, we will dive into some more football talk next Wednesday. Appreciate you coming on board.
Thank you for having us.
Can't wait.
For everybody else, we're going to be back on the line in about 5 minutes with Cam Underwood from State of the U talking, yeah, it's a dirty word, Miami, talking Miami football at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Yes, 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 which leads me, Jason, of course, it ran through my head during some of this conversation, the week of the game. Man, we do a 2-hour block, and we're just having a ball. But, yeah, Miami football talk at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Different links, so I'm going to shut it down right here, but keep it locked in here at the Voice of College Football from Miami at 8 o'clock, Ohio State at 9 o'clock Eastern.